female reproductive system, and we will be discussing the physiology of pregnancy and particularly these miscellaneous topics one by one. So let's begin with how the ovum is matured. As we have discussed the steps in the ovum development in our first session, I'll just look into how the chromosomal content is divided from 46 diploid number to mature oocyte. So as you know, the primary oocyte is present arrested in prophase 1, and after puberty every month only one primary oocyte will reach maturity and ovulate every month until the menopause ensues. This enlarged primary oocyte has 46 chromosomes, that is a diploid number, and these 46 chromosomes are double stranded. The maturation of this primary oocyte to secondary oocyte for this ovum, one ovum per month, will include completion of the meiosis 1 and formation of secondary oocyte, whereas the first polar body will be disintegrated. The 46 chromosomal content will be divided into a haploid number, that is 23 chromosomes each, 23 in the polar body and 23 in the secondary oocyte. This is still having double-stranded 23 chromosomes. When this secondary oocyte will start meiosis 2 and still arrested, will ovulate, and if fertilized will complete its secondary meiosis, that is meiosis 2, to convert into now mature ovum and another polar body, and will divide its 23 double-stranded chromosomes to 23 single-stranded chromosomes each. So ultimately the mature ovum we have is having half the content as compared to the primary oocyte, that is 23 single-stranded chromosomes. Now this ovum when fertilized with sperm will again have 46 chromosomes. Fertilization of the ovum occurs in the female reproductive tract. As you know that ovum after ovulation from the ovary is taken up by the fallopian tube. Here the ciliated epithelium of fallopian tube beat it towards the ostium. Let me make it up for you, as this is, let's suppose, uterus, and these are the fallopian tubes, and here are the ovaries from where the fimbriated end of the fallopian tubes took up the ovary after ovulation. Now they have to transport it over here to the uterine cavity, and this is possible because of the beating of the ciliated epithelium, and estrogen is responsible for enhancing this ciliary movement. As on the other hand, the sperm coming from the cervix to the uterine cavity, cervical mucus became thin, watery, and penetrable to sperm for 2 to 3 days around ovulation, again under the influence of the estrogen. This sperm will migrate up the cervical canal under their own power. As you know, the sperms have their flagella, and by beating of this flagella, sorry for the poor drawing, they migrate up in the uterine cavity. On entering the uterus, not only the flagellar movement but also the mild contractions of the uterine myometrium help in the dispersion of the sperms to the oviduct. So ultimately, this is the fallopian tube where fertilization occurs, not the uterine cavity. Sperms are propelled to ampulla by the contractions of the oviduct smooth muscles. The myometrial and oviduct contractions are caused by the high estrogen levels. Also, prostaglandins and oxytocin can aid this. The sperms smell their way to the egg. Now that they are moving up the uterine cavity and enter the fallopian tube, basically there is a chemoattractant in the ampulla, which is because of the progesterone released from the follicular cell that attracts the sperm towards itself, and ultimately the fertilization is to occur inside the oviduct. Now, what happens during fertilization? How the sperm enters into the ovum. As you know, the ovum is surrounded by multiple other layers, as is the zona pellucida and the corona radiata, the multiple layer of the follicular cell. Sperm has to cross through all these cells and then the zona pellucida to enter into the ovum and then fertilize with it. As you appreciate over here, this is the sperm entering and it is moving across the mass of the corona radiata cells. Once it reaches the zona pellucida, it attaches over here on the receptor called ZP3 receptor, and here the acrosomal reaction occurs once it has attached to the zona pellucida. The acrosomal enzymes would be released that will help the sperm to pass through the zona pellucida and reach the membrane of the ovum. Here the membrane of the sperm and the ovum will fuse and the sperm DNA content will be released into the ovum cytoplasm and there they will combine. So step by step, there was first chemoattraction of the sperm to the ovum because of the release of the prostaglandin from the follicular cells. Once the sperm has reached the ovum, it will first penetrate through the corona radiata, then adhere to the zona pellucida, ZP3 receptor, and then the penetration of zona pellucida leading to the acrosomal reaction, ultimately adherence of sperm head to the cell membrane of the ovum will break down the area of fusion and the sperm nucleus will be released into the cytoplasm of the ovum. So what is this acrosomal reaction and why are we emphasizing it again and again? The sperm binding to the receptor ZP3 in the zona pellucida is followed by this acrosomal reaction, which is particularly the breakdown of the acrosome, the lysozyme-like organelle on the head of the sperm. This is the head of the sperm. It has a nuclear content, and here you could appreciate the accumulation of acrosomal granules which are resembling the lysosomes. The release of these lysosomal or acrosomal enzymes are basically the hydrolytic enzymes, for example, protease, acrosome. It facilitates the penetration of sperm through the zona pellucida, otherwise it would not have been successful in passing across the zona pellucida. Also, these enzymes help in fusion of the sperm with the membrane of the ovum. As soon as this fusion occurs, multiple cortical granules are released from the ovum as well, which helps in prevention of the polyspermy. How do they do that? By reduction in the membrane potential of the ovum and structural changes in the zona pellucida. So, acrosomal reaction, number one, is brought about by attachment of sperm to the zona pellucida and is followed by release of acrosomal granules. These acrosomal reactions help in two things. Number one, passage through the zona pellucida, and number two, fusion with the membrane of the ovum. And this is followed by a secondary advantage of prevention of polyspermy. Now, let me show you the image again. When we looked at this, you would have appreciated these cortical granules. As the sperm head attaches to the membrane on the cell membrane of the ovum, these cortical granules are also released and they change the potential of the ovum membrane. How do they do it? They decrease the potential. As you can see, this is being released. They decrease the potential of the cell membrane of the ovum to fuse with any more sperm head. Plus, they do the structural changes in the zonal pellucida, thus not allowing the attachment of any more sperms so that the polyspermy is prevented. So this is what is acrosomal reaction along with its added advantages. So it is helping in prevention of polyspermy as well as helping in the movement of the first sperm into the ovum. This image is showing the uptake of ovum. Where is my cursor gone? Okay, so uptake of ovum into the fimbriated end of the fallopian tube, followed by fertilization over here in the dilated ampullary end. And after fertilization, you can see the cell division has already begun before the zygote entered into the uterine cavity. and the morula is this, which is entering the uterine cavity. Inside the uterine cavity, after the fertilization, it is again taking approximately 5 days before the zygote, or I must say it, embryo right now, uh, implants onto the endometrium. So throughout this time, the 5 to 7 days from the ovulation till the implantation, the nutrition to the embryo is provided by the uterine milk and the fallopian tube secretions. Feeble fluid current in the fallopian tube, that is produced by the epithelial secretion as well as by the ciliary epithelium of the fallopian tube, plus the weak contractions of the fallopian tube. These are all the factors which aid and facilitate the movement of the embryo from the fallopian tube to the uterine cavity. So the transport of fertilized ovum in the fallopian tube requires approximately 3 to 5 days. The reason is the surface of the fallopian tube is rugged, which impedes the passage of the ovum. Number two, the isthmus of the fallopian tube, where it was attached with the uterine cavity over here. At this point, this is also spastically contracted for about 3 days after ovulation. So slow movement plus contraction of the isthmus that retards the movement of the embryo to the uterine cavity, which is that by taking 3 to 5 days. After this time, the progesterone from the corpus luteum will exert a relaxing effect on the tubules and the isthmus will be dilated, and then the zygote will enter into the uterine cavities.